The sun scorched the empty road like a judgment. Asphalt shimmered in the heat, and not a soul stirred along the long country stretch. But there he sat, small, shivering, and silently waiting. A brown dog, no collar, ribs poking through matted fur, and eyes that clung to every passing car like it might be the one. For 3 days, he hadn't moved far from that one cracked patch of gravel. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply waited. They say animals can't hope. But if you'd looked into his eyes, you'd know they were wrong. Because hope was all he had left. The few who passed by didn't notice. Or maybe they did, and just chose to keep driving. A farmer, a tourist, a delivery van. They slowed, looked, and drove on. Maybe they thought he was dangerous. Maybe they just didn't care. But someone had to. Someone would. It was the 3rd day when a dusty blue pickup truck finally slowed, braking gently as it approached the dog. The driver, a woman in her early 30s, looked out with tired eyes. Her name was Leah. She wasn't a rescuer by profession. She wasn't even planning to stop. But something about those eyes, those pleading, wordless eyes, reached into her chest and squeezed. She rolled down the window slowly. "Hey there, buddy," she said softly. "You waiting for someone?" The dog didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stood up on wobbly legs and took a step toward her truck, tail wagging just once, slow and unsure. Leah opened her door. He froze. She waited. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he moved. Carefully. Every step seemed to ask, "Asterisk, is it safe? Will you hurt me? Or leave like the others?" Asterisk. When he reached her, he didn't jump. He didn't lick her. He just sat beside her feet and looked up, as if saying, "Please don't go." Leah crouched, her hand hovering just above his head. "Your skin and bones," she whispered, blinking back tears. "What happened to you?" She touched his fur. It was coarse and tangled. And then she saw it, a faded patch where a collar used to be. Someone had loved him once. Or pretended to. But now he was here. Alone. Forgotten. Leah didn't know why, but she opened her truck door wider and patted the seat. "Come on, boy. Let's get out of the sun." He hesitated only a second. Then, with a shaky jump, he climbed in. Her truck wasn't fancy. It was cluttered with receipts, reusable bags, and empty coffee cups. But to him, it must have felt like a palace. The moment he laid down, he sighed, the first sound he'd made in days. Leah glanced at him and smiled. "You don't have a name, do you?" she said aloud. "Guess we'll work on that." She started the engine and drove. The road stretched ahead, just trees, fields, and winding gravel. But now she wasn't alone. And neither was he. They drove in silence for a while, the dog resting his head on the seat, eyes closing slowly. She kept glancing at him, wondering who he had waited for. A cruel owner? A lost family? Was someone searching for him? Or had they thrown him out like trash? The town wasn't far, just 30 miles west. Leah made a quiet decision to skip her errand and go straight to the vet. But halfway there, the dog stirred. He sat up, ears alert, and let out a soft whimper. "What is it, boy?" she asked gently. And that's when it happened. His body tensed, and his eyes fixed on something ahead. Leah squinted through the windshield. Nothing. Just an abandoned roadside fruit stand. She pulled over anyway, sensing something. The moment the truck stopped, the dog jumped down and ran. Not fast, but with a strange kind of urgency, toward the stand. "Hey, wait," she called, chasing after him. He stopped in front of an old, weather-beaten sign. His tail wagged, more confident now. Leah approached slowly, heart pounding. That's when she saw the torn poster nailed to the post beside the stand. It was faded, almost illegible. But she could still make out the photo. A young boy around 10, with the same dog, back when he looked healthy and strong. Lost, Max reward. Call if seen. Leah turned to look at the dog. "Your name is Max," she whispered. He wagged his tail harder this time, his eyes brightening as if to say, asterisk yes. "I remember now, asterisk." But there was no number, no contact, no name, just the memory, and a silent promise Leah made right there. "I'll find him," she said quietly. "I'll find the boy who lost you." And as Max pressed his head against her leg, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long golden rays through the trees, as if the world itself paused to hope, just for a moment, that they'd make it. To be continued in part 2. Leah couldn't sleep that night. Even after bringing Max home, feeding him, and watching him finally collapse into a deep, peaceful sleep on an old blanket by the heater. Her thoughts kept circling back to that torn poster. Who was the boy? Was he still looking for Max? She sat on the couch beside the sleeping dog, scrolling through local forums and missing pet pages, typing variations of boy lost dog Max, missing child with brown dog, anything that might lead to him. But nothing matched. The next morning, Max was already sitting by the door when Leah woke up, tail thumping. His eyes were clearer, more focused, as if some part of him had returned the moment he saw that poster. He was still weak, but the spark was back. "You ready, boy?" she asked, grabbing her keys. "Let's find your human." Leah started with the obvious, returning to the old fruit stand. She brought copies of the faded poster, had it enhanced and reprinted at a local shop, and tacked them to poles, fences, and bulletin boards in a 20-mile radius. "Anyone who's seen this boy and his dog, please call," the poster now read. She included her cell number. Max sat patiently each time she stapled one up, as if he knew exactly what they were doing. Hours passed. They drove through small towns, visited animal shelters, talked to elderly farmers and grocery clerks. But every time she mentioned the boy in the picture, she was met with shrugs and blank stares. Then, at a small corner gas station, a woman at the register leaned forward and pointed at the poster. "I've seen that kid," she said. Leah's heart skipped. "Really?" The woman nodded. "Last summer. He and his grandpa used to come through here. They lived off-grid somewhere in the hills. Don't think they came into town much." Leah leaned in, hopeful. "Do you remember where exactly?" The woman shook her head. "No address. But there's an old trail up north. Hunters used to use it. Maybe check there." It wasn't much, but it was a direction. Max was quiet during the drive, his head resting on Leah's lap as the truck rumbled up a rough, winding road deep into the hills. Tall pine trees lined the path, and the air grew cooler. It felt like they were leaving the world behind. Eventually, the truck couldn't go further. Leah parked and got out, Max hopping down beside her. They walked in silence, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound. After nearly an hour, they reached a clearing. Old fire pit, wooden planks where a small shelter once stood, and an overturned chair still resting near a dry creek. Max sniffed the air, then darted forward, tail high. He stopped near a tree stump, pawing at something buried in the soil. Leah knelt beside him and dug gently. A child's shoe, faded and muddy. Her chest tightened. "Someone lived here," she whispered. "You remember, don't you?" Max barked once. Sharp, purposeful. A few minutes later, they found more clues. An old photo frame half covered in moss, a torn backpack strap, a rusted canteen. Someone had definitely called this place home. But it was empty now. Disheartened, Leah turned back. Maybe they moved, maybe it's too late. Max didn't follow. He stood frozen, eyes fixed on a ridge beyond the clearing. Then he ran. "Max! Max, wait!" Leah chased him, heart pounding. He was faster now, stronger. Fueled by something more than memory. He led her through thickets and over fallen logs until finally, they reached a small wooden cabin tucked behind a curtain of trees. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney. Leah hesitated. Then she walked to the door and knocked. Footsteps. The door creaked open. A boy, maybe 11, stood in the doorway. Messy hair, wide eyes, a faded shirt far too small for him. Max whined. The boy blinked, frozen. Then he whispered, "Max." Max barked, wagging furiously, pawing at the boy's chest. The boy dropped to his knees, throwing his arms around the dog. "I thought you were gone. I thought you'd died," he sobbed. Leah watched, tears slipping down her face. She wanted to speak, but this moment wasn't hers. From inside the cabin, an older man appeared, thin, pale, leaning heavily on a cane. His eyes widened in disbelief. You found him." Leah nodded, barely managing to speak. He waited. 3 days by the road. Waiting. The man's eyes filled with tears. He ran off when the storm hit. "We searched for days, but we thought he was gone." Leah looked at the boy. He never stopped looking. "Not really." The boy hugged Max tighter. "I knew he'd come back. I just knew it." And as the sun dipped behind the ridge, the forest around them shimmered in gold, the silence filled only by soft sobs and the gentle rustling of leaves. Witness to a bond that time, distance, and even despair couldn't break. To be continued in part 3. They let Leah step inside, the warmth of the small cabin wrapping around her like a memory. It was modest, wooden beams, a single fireplace, handmade furniture, but it was full of life now. Max lay curled at the boy's feet, the two inseparable again as if no time had passed. The boy's name was Eli. He had been just 9 when his family lost everything and moved deep into the hills to live with his grandfather. His parents had died in a car crash shortly after, and the old man had done his best to raise him alone. Max was the only thing left from their old life. When Max ran off, Eli whispered, I cried every night. Grandpa said sometimes animals go off to die when they're sick, but I didn't believe that. Max wouldn't leave me. Not without a reason. Leah looked at the boy, holding back tears. He didn't leave you. He got lost, but he never stopped waiting. Eli smiled for the first time since she arrived. I knew it. The next few hours passed gently. Leah shared how she'd found Max, how the dog had refused to leave the roadside, how he had waited for someone, anyone, to care. She didn't know if Max remembered where he came from, or if fate had simply led them back. But either way, they had found each other again. The old man, Eli's grandfather, walked slowly to Leah as Max slept soundly between the boy's legs. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You don't need to, Leah replied softly. He saved himself. I just happened to be passing by. The man looked down. People pass by all the time. Most don't stop. Leah nodded. I almost didn't. But you did, he said. And that made all the difference. Later that night, Leah prepared to leave. She had a life to return to, a quiet apartment, a job, and bills that didn't care about miracles. But something tugged at her. Something about this boy, this place, this dog who waited 3 days for a stranger who would lead him home. As she reached the truck, Eli ran out barefoot and breathless, Max trailing right behind him. Wait, the boy called. You can't just go. Leah turned, surprised. Why not? Eli held something in his hands. It was the faded photo from the poster, the one with him and Max. He held it out to her. You keep it, so you don't forget us. Leah smiled, her eyes stinging again. I couldn't forget you if I tried. Max barked softly, as if agreeing. The boy looked down, his voice small. Will you come visit us sometimes? Leah knelt and ruffled his hair. I'll do more than that. I'll bring food, medicine, even books. Deal. Eli's face lit up. Deal. And Max licked her hand, the same hand that had reached out of the truck 3 days ago, the same hand he'd chosen to trust. As Leah drove off that night, the stars stretched wide across the sky. Her chest felt full, not just with relief, but with something deeper, a kind of healing, a quiet truth, that sometimes the lost aren't waiting for rescue. They're waiting to be seen. Moral of the story asterisk. In a world where it's easy to look away, where pain and need often pass by unnoticed, the smallest act of kindness can change everything. One moment of compassion, one stop along the road, one voice that says, asterisk, I see you. You matter. Asterisk. Max waited 3 days, but that one stranger who stopped gave him a second chance at life and brought a boy's heart back home. Never underestimate what a small act of empathy can do, because sometimes you're not just saving a life, you're returning it.